Hello, I'm Amelia, Groups and Membership Officer for Voluntary Norfolk and Momentum.
And I'm Amy, I'm the Interim Service Manager for Momentum.
Today, Amy and I are going to be looking at a Momentum small grants form, and Amy's going to pretend to be an applicant, and we're going to take you through the stages of completing a grants form. So Amy, do you want to share the screen?
Yes, just one moment, here we go. Okay, so this is the basic grant application form, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So the important thing is like with everything, is that you really need to do your preparation, and it says at the top to read the guidelines on the Momentum website. Usually when somebody asks for a grant application form, I also send out the guidelines as a Word document. And I think it's really useful to have a good read of these and maybe have them by your side when you're completing the form. I think the top thing that we've added, because some of you might have filled in grant applications before, we've changed the form a bit. And one of the things we've put to the top is the fact that they are assessed, the grants are assessed by young people. So it'll actually be the young commissioners at your local YAB who'll look at the grant applications and make a decision. And I think it's really important to have that in mind when you're completing the form.
So it has to be written in a way that a young person would understand, not too much jargon or sort of technical language.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Also, there's a little bit about your Voluntary Norfolk and Momentum membership. Membership is likely to change in 2021, so if you're unsure about that, then it's the best thing to do is to contact us. So the first bit you'll need to fill in, Amy, is decide which grant you want to apply for.
Okay, so if I'm running, let's imagine I'm running a youth club in a village somewhere in Norfolk, and my young people that are coming to my youth club, they really want some new games to play on the Nintendo Wii that we've got at the youth club. What would that come under?
So I think that would be equipment.
That sounds good to me. So I pick equipment. It's not letting me put X in the box.
Okay, you might be able to just highlight it.
Yeah. There we go. However, we can fill it in one way or another. We'll find a way to make it clear what grant you're applying for.
Yeah, you're not going to get discounted for not ticking the box and using a colour instead. The other grants that you can apply for are startup or capacity. So startup would be if you're starting a group. Capacity is if you're running a group already, but you want to build capacity, you want to grow it, you come to a point where you need to sort of develop it a bit. Training and development, that's for training. So you can actually apply for some of the Momentum youth work training courses. Amy, did you want to say a little bit more about the level 2 and the level 3?
Yeah, of course. We do, every year we run at least one at level 2 and level 3 youth work course. So whatever point in this video, there's probably a course starting soon. And those are courses that can qualify you to become a youth support worker. So they're nationally recognised courses accredited by the National Open College Network. And you start with the level 2. You do the compulsory units on that. There's a mixture of online sessions, and we're hoping to build in some more face-to-face work on those courses as well. And the idea is you put together a portfolio based on all of the stuff that you've learned throughout the course, and that's the process. And then after you finish your level 2, you can go on to the level 3 course.
And the other one we've got is activity or project, and some people use that to fund a trip. Also I think we have used grants in the past to pay for staff time. So the staff, you wanted to employ someone to come in and do a specific activity with the young people you work with. If you're not sure if your activity or the thing that you want funding for doesn't fit into any of that criteria, then please get in touch. We try to be as flexible as possible. Okay, if we go down to the next bit, Amy, do you want to start completing?
Just on the activity project, am I right in thinking that trips would count under that as well? So if you wanted to do a day trip out to the beach or something like that, that would be a project grant.
Yeah, a trip, yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, name of group. Well, we're going to have to make something up. So I'm just going to put any town youth club. Applicant name would be my name as the person filling out the form.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's put youth club leader. I'm going to leave the address fields blank for obvious reasons. But this is where, yeah, you put in all of your details for your group so that we can contact you about it.
Yeah. The district bit is really important, and the reason we need to know that is because it'll be the Youth Advisory Board, the YAB for your particular area, so South Norfolk, Norwich, Breckland, so make sure that you put that in there.
Right, I'm going to say that our fictional youth club is in Broadland.
So the next bit, aims and objectives. You're going to have a little bit more space below to talk about and more detail your group. So it just needs to be a sort of headline, few lines about what your group does. And we have applications from sports clubs, more traditional youth groups, or groups that work with a specific group of young people. So this is your chance just to say exactly, say what your group does.
Okay, so if it's a youth club, we can say something like, it's a Thursday evening youth club for 11 to 16-year-olds living in any town.
Perfect.
Would that be enough, or do you need more detail than that?
I think that would be enough. You can always go back, and if you can't fit, if you feel like you haven't said what you want to say early in the rest of the application, you can always go back and add it. But I think for now that would be enough. Okay. So the next bit, this is going to be new to people. If you've applied for a Momentum grant in the past, then this bit is going to be new. And we're going to ask you information about the venue, the time you meet, the day of the week, and any other useful information. And this is because in the new system, we want to be able to visit groups that have made an application. And this is a chance for us to get to know you, get to know, the young people that you work with, find out a bit more about the activities you run. And also, if you do find there's any areas that you need support with, this will be a chance for us to sort of talk about that with you. At the moment, obviously, face-to-face visits are really challenging. In fact, they probably wouldn't take place. We're recording this in December 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. But what we can do is, what we have done with other applicants is arranged a Zoom call. So I had a Zoom call with a group of young people in Great Yarmouth to talk about, to get to know what their group was doing, and also find out why they wanted to make the application for the bit of equipment that they were applying for.
So the idea behind the visits, it's not going to be like an Ofsted inspection, is it? We're not coming in and trying to tell you how to run your group. It's just about making sure that we've heard from the young people about what they want and why they want it. Yes,
and it's a chance for us to get out of the office and actually come and meet groups.
Yeah, exactly. Always good to see youth groups in action.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's imagine we've
fill that form in.
At this next bit.
So this is the bit where, when you asked before about, do you need any more detail, you can talk more about the young people that you work with. So you might work with a specific group of young people, maybe refugee asylum seekers, or young people from a specific geographical area or with particular needs. And maybe your group does something to meet those needs. So that's just another chance to tell us a little bit more about what your group does.
So, for instance, if the youth club had been set up because the local parish council recognised that there wasn't anything for young people to do in the town, that would be something to put in there to explain the value of the youth club and the impact that it has on the community.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that would be a really good example. I think the important thing is with all grant applications is don't leave anything blank. If you can't fill it in, explain why you can't fill it in. Use that box to explain why. The next bit as well, this might be, so if you pretend we've filled in the bit about the young people you work with, what does your group do? This bit might be a bit confusing because, as most of you will know, that these grants are for 11 to 19-year-olds. So you might wonder why we're asking if you work with under 5s. And that's because some groups might not you might be applying for a grant for to work with your 11 to 19-year-olds, but it's really interesting and useful to know if you work with other age groups as well. It tells us a bit more about the work that you're doing and the group you run. So you can say, if you did say run a group for younger primary school children, you could tick the 6 to 10-year-old box, but then we would really want to know how many 11 to 19-year-olds attend your group, because that's where we want the funding to go to.
So it might be that if you were a scout group, for instance, and you had your cubs and your beavers and your scouts, you would actually cross a lot of those boxes, but the grant money would only be for those older groups.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you might be working with over 19-year-olds as well. You know, we have some groups that work with, you know, young people who are in their 20s as well. So, and that's okay.
So what about if we're imagining that this was a brand new group applying for a startup grant? They're not going to know how many young people are going to attend. So how might they fill out this box?
I think it would be maybe how many people do you expect to turn up, or how many people do you hope will come along? You know, if you've done you must have done some background research before starting your group and identified a need, and so that's a chance to fill in that bit. And I think it goes back to the what I was saying before, is don't leave any boxes blank. You should always fill it in with something. If you can't answer it, you need to explain why. And it might be that if you haven't started the group, then this is the time to say that you haven't started the group, but you have identified a need in the area, and that's why you want to start the group.
And we're not basing whether or not you get the money on how many, you know, it's not a sort of quantity over quality thing, is it? So even if you were only working with 5 young people, but you were providing a really good quality service for those 5 young people, then you could still get the grant for that.
Yes, and you might be working in a really rural area in a small village where there might only be 5 or 6 young people, but actually the difference you make to those young people's lives who are living in a very isolated rural area will be massive. And that's something that we want you to explain, and something that we'd hope the young commissioners would take into account. So it is, like you say, quality, not quantity. So the next bit, grant details. Please tell us what the grant will be used for. So I think this goes back to the top, if you remember the top lines of the application, and it's remembering that this will be young people reading this, and they'll really want to know what difference is this grant going to make to the young people you work with. And so always have that at the front of your mind when you're filling this in.
So it wouldn't be enough to say, we're going to use this money to buy some bean bags. You'd have to go into a bit more detail about why you've identified that your youth club needs bean bags. It might be that young people have asked for them because they think it will create a more welcoming space rather than having hard plastic chairs that look like school chairs or something like that. It's not just about describing what you're going to buy, it's explaining the rationale behind it.
Yeah. So just explaining a bit more. And if you, a good tip as well is that if you are writing this, is to maybe get a family member or a friend who isn't maybe closely connected with the group to read this, to make sure it makes sense. Sometimes when we're writing about something that we're really involved with, so we can end up using shorthand or abbreviations. And so it's worthwhile getting somebody who's maybe not connected directly with the group to read it, to see if it makes sense. And they'll be able to, if there's anything that's a bit confusing or they don't understand, they'll be able to sort of draw that out.
What about these tick boxes here then?
Yes, so tick all the boxes are relevant. So don't worry if you can't tick all of them, but maybe you might have to think a bit outside the box to think about how something like a beanbag would help with something like self-confidence. So it's really thinking about the impact that this bit of equipment or this activity will have. Thinking about maybe this is a good opportunity to talk to the young people you work with, to try and really get to the bottom of the difference that the piece of equipment or the activity will make.
So it could be that you're applying for an activity grant to do a trip out to the beach, like I said earlier, and you might not immediately think, well, going to the beach is going to improve people's emotional well-being. but actually having a day that they can look forward to, that is going to be a fun day out with their friends from the youth club, actually that could have a really big impact on their emotional well-being. It might not be the obvious sort of benefit, but it's going to have a knock-on effect, isn't it?
Yes, and it depends on the group of young people as well. A trip to the seaside, if you live in Winterton, is very different than if you live in maybe like a really urban area of Norwich, and maybe come from you could be sort of from a refugee asylum seeker family that's recently arrived in the UK, and so going to see the English seaside for the first time is going to have a different impact to somebody who maybe lives in Yarmouth and sees it all the time. And I think that maybe leads us on to the next bit about what difference will this grant make specifically to the young people you work with? How will it add value to your work? What difference will it make to them? So that's just explaining things. And that's, again, this is a time to maybe get someone else to have a look at it, because sometimes you can make assumptions. If you're really close to the application, you can make assumptions and think people will understand what you're trying to communicate, but actually you need somebody maybe who's outside your group to actually really have a look at it and see if it does make sense.
And I know that we're not writing in all of these boxes, but with this being a Word document, the box will expand as well. So don't think that you've only got this amount of lines to write something in. If you go over that, the box will just get bigger.
Yeah.
So you can write as much as you need to make sure that you've really got your point across as well. Yeah.
Although remember to use quite simple, straightforward language. Avoid abbreviations, avoid jargon, avoid anything too complicated. Sometimes if you're used to writing a lot of grants, you might start using sort of grant language. You might be imagining that you're writing for the lottery community fund or something, and that which is going to be assessed by somebody in an office somewhere. Got to remember all the time this is going to be read by teenagers, so make your language, take time to make your language really clear. The next
it might be a really good thing then to run it past the young people at your group and say, okay, so you know that you've asked for this new equipment, or you want to do this trip. I've written this grant application. What do you think? Do you think this sums it up? And if there's anything in there that they don't understand, the likelihood is the young people either. That could be a good thing to do.
So yeah, get somebody outside the group to read it. If you can get a young person to read it, that's even better. The next bit, when will the activity take place? Now, this is really important. This is important to me as somebody who administrates the grants, because actually it's quite a lengthy process. Once the grant application comes to me and I've processed it, I send it on to the local youth advisory board, and then it may take some weeks for them to actually have a meeting and have time within their agenda within that meeting to look at the grant application. So it's not, we can't, if you've got an activity that's taking place in April, don't leave it till March to fill in the application form. Leave probably about 12 weeks at least. So make sure you're planning ahead. If you're not sure when the activity will take place, explain why, or maybe you maybe have a rough idea, but just bear in mind the amount of time it takes to process a grant form and plan ahead. Does that make sense?
And I guess that goes for training courses as well. So if you wanted to use this as a training grant to book 3 places on a first aid course, you need to make sure that you're leaving enough time for that grant to be processed before the date of the training course.
Yes, and that's not just for external training courses, that's also for training courses run by Momentum or Voluntary Norfolk, because even though it might seem like you're making a grant application to us for a course that we're running, what you're not taking into account is the fact that it still needs to be signed off by the Youth Advisory Board. So please plan ahead to avoid disappointment. Right, the next bit is breakdown of financial information, and this is where you get to really show that you've thought about what the amount that you need and you've planned it already. So it might be looking at how much the beanbags cost or the games cost, or you've got some quotes from train tickets for the trip to the seaside, or training you've looked at a training booking form. So this is where you sort of really break down what the costs are. So
it says about proof of costs as well, so that might be
yeah.
If like you say, if you've got a quote from a coach company, then you can attach that as additional information with the grant, can't you?
Yeah, we'll get to the bit about supporting documents a bit later. So at the moment it's like a budget. Also want to know about funding that's already in place. So because you might actually be applying for you can apply for up to £500 with a Momentum grant, but you might be running an activity that costs more than that, and we want to know how you're going to actually fund the rest of that. And it might be money that's been raised by the young people, it might be by other grants. So this is a chance for you to tell us about that. And this section really shows that you're thinking about it and you've planned the grant application. So this isn't something that you're just doing on a whim, that you're really thinking carefully about where you want this funding to go to and how you want it to be spent.
And what about if you've got some other funding in place that might be funding in kind? So there might be, say you're setting up a new youth club and there's a local business that have offered to donate a load of board games. Could you put that down on the form as well?
I think you can put down, I think more information you can put down about the grant and how it's being, what your plans are, why you want it, what the costs are, including costs in kind, the better. Ultimately, it'll be the Youth Advisory Board, it'll be the young commissioners that make the decision. But the more information you can give them, the more that, the easier they'll find it to make that decision. All the evidence.
They might be really interested to know what other funding you've managed to get and from where, because it shows how much support there is for the project in the wider community as well. Especially if the young people have been doing some fundraising themselves, that shows that they're really committed to it, doesn't it?
And there'll be local young people as well looking at this grant, so they might be familiar with the local business that you're getting from donations from as well. So all the information that you can provide, the better. The more that you can, the better. So do you want to scroll down? Okay, it's really important to us and also to the young commissioners that the group that you're running is running safely and correctly. And this is why we ask you about, if you've got the following documents in place. We don't need to see these documents. We don't need copies of them. We just need to know you've got them. If you haven't got them, then let us know, or if they're out of date or you've got any concerns about them, let us know, because we can help you put that right. We can support you to get the right documents in place. So we'd rather know if you haven't got one than not know. And we're not going to just turn you down if your health and safety policy is out of date. If you let us know, we can help you update that. Is there anything you wanted to add to that about policies and documents and the support we can offer, Amy?
I guess for some organisations, they might be covered by an umbrella organisation. So going back to our example earlier of the Scout group, often they have policies that are from the sort of national level. How would that work for them?
I think that you just need to explain it, and if there are any doubts about it, we might come back to you, or the young commissioners might ask us to come back to you to actually have a look at the documents. You've got a box there, and like you said earlier, the boxes will expand. So if you need to write an explanation about why you haven't got your own equal opportunities policy, then let us know.
Or maybe your public liability insurance is covered by the parish council who run the village hall where you have your youth club. So you could just put something in there. So you tick the box and just say, got this in place and we have an agreement with the parish council. Right.
And this is something that we can pick up at the visit as well as us visiting. We're really hoping that once things start to open up again, that maybe the young commissioners might like to visit as well. And so if there are any issues or any questions that they have about your application, the visit will be a chance for them to sort of talk to you about it, or for us to talk to you about it, and for you to explain a little bit more about how your group works.
Great.
Right, the next bit. These are the documents you do need to send us copies of. At the moment, because we're still working from home, the best way to do this is if you can scan them and email them to us. you can still post documents to our office, but they just won't get there as quickly because we're only picking up post occasionally. So Amy's already mentioned that we need to have evidence of the costs and the booking forms. So it might be, travel expenses, it might be the cost of the equipment or the cost of the activity. So that's where you actually you supply that, and it might be something that you've got from the internet, or might be an actual invoice, but the important thing is that we see some sort of evidence. We'll also need to see a recent copy of your organisation's bank statement, so within the last 3 months, a copy of your child protection or safeguarding policy, an example of a completed risk assessment. And this is all really, it comes down to the fact that we want to fund groups that are run safely, and so that's why we need to see that evidence.
Yeah, and the bank statement is so that we can check that the bank account that we're paying the grant money into is in the group's name and not in the name of an individual. So yeah. if your group that you're applying for doesn't have its own bank account, we won't be able to make any kind of grant payment into an individual's bank account. So the options would be to either get a bank account for your group, or if that's not an option for whatever reason, there might be another organisation like a parish council or an umbrella organisation who would be willing to hold the funds on your behalf, and we can work with that. But what we can't do is pay it into a personal bank account.
If you are having trouble setting up a bank account for your group, then please get in touch with us, because we might be able to give you some support doing that as well. So if you don't meet any of these criteria, but you're still interested in the funding, I think the message is to make sure that you get in touch with us, and we can see if we can give you the support to get you ready to be able to apply for the grant. Right, we're nearly at the end now. So
just a quick point on the evidence of the cost. So we know as well that sometimes between completing the application form and actually going out and buying the stuff, sometimes prices change. So particularly with things like equipment grants, you might take loads of screenshots from the Argos website of the things that you want to buy for your group, and then when you actually go to order them, some of the stuff is out. You might want to change and get something that's, a similar item, but it might be a slightly different cost, and we do understand that. So don't worry too much if the costs have changed a little bit. If there's drastic changes, like you go back to the coach company and say, yes, we want to go ahead with our trip, and they say, well, actually it's doubled since we gave you the quote, then come back to us and let us know, and we'll help work with that. It might be that if there's a really big change, it might need to go back to the young commissioners just to make sure that they're okay with that. But little things will change, and we do accept that that's just going to happen.
Okay, so we've almost finished completing the form. You've got your documents ready, either scanned or attached. So you just need to go through the final declaration. So make sure that double check that everything, all the details on the form are correct, especially contact details. You're also signing that if the grant's awarded, you'll only use the grant for the purposes detailed in this application. Although, as Amy said, if you need to change your purpose, then you just need to get back in touch with us, and we might need to get in touch with the young commissioners. And this is something that has come up a lot this year, because people's plans have had to change and then change again. And we are flexible, but you do just need to let us know, and you do need to factor in the extra time it will take to get the new purposes signed off by us and by the young commissioners. The next bit, we just need to double check you've got all the supporting documents. This is one of the major reasons that slows down applications, is because people have forgotten to send in one of their documents. So make sure you check that you've got everything. We do ask that the grant is spent within the 12 months. We now pay the grant in one instalment, so you haven't got this 2 instalments that you used to have, of about £250 each, that you used to have with the old system. So hopefully, if you get all the grant in one lump sum of up to £500, you've got 12 months, which is a reasonably large amount of time to spend the money in. If you find you can't, then please get back into touch with us. The final thing, or did you want to add something about that?
I was going to say, there might be a very good reason why you haven't spent it in 12 months. Like if you've planned a trip and it's been delayed for whatever reason, then we can take that into account. But what we don't want is grants that just tail on for years and years and become a bit of a millstone around your neck. It's not good for your group, and it slows everything down.
And the last bit is just remembering that the momentum, and so somebody from the momentum team and possibly the young commissioners might want to visit the group, and you just need to be ready for that. And then all you need to do is sign and print your name and put the date, and then you can either post it, although at the moment the best thing to do is to email it to us, because then we'll get it more quickly. I think that's the end of the application process. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Amy?
No, I think that was a really good run through, and thanks very much for explaining all those bits of the form. I guess it's just to reiterate, I know you've said it a couple of times, but if anyone gets stuck completing the form, then they are very welcome to send an email or pick up the phone and speak to us about it. And I know that you're very happy to talk groups through this process, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. Okay, well, that's your grant form. Good luck with your application for any town. Hope you hear back from us soon.
I think the biggest flaw in the application will be that the youth club doesn't exist, but
yeah,
happy in real life.
But okay, well, I'm going to stop recording now and we'll say goodbye.
Bye.